Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and this video is going to be diving in to the dungeon loot mechanics centered around the dragon lair. So let's get into it. Alrighty, so with the dragon's lair being probably the most important dungeon in the game to farm because it drops the speed set, which is probably the best and most generally useful set in the game, along with lifesteal, accuracy, and other good sets that drop in the dungeon as well. And also that it's a little bit of a more realistic dungeon to get to the end game typically. The Spider and the Fire Knight obviously being the two really tough ones. At this point, I've done probably over 100 account takeovers, and I would say more than 90 of them revolve around some sort of help for the Spider and the Fire Knight. I haven't really gotten a whole lot of requests in terms of fixing dragon teams. It's typically, hey, my dragon team's already good, but if you can make it a little bit faster, that'd be great. But then when it comes to Spider and Fire Knight, I'm constantly doing account takeovers like, what do I do here? I can't beat this dungeon. I can't progress. So given all of those factors, with the dragon dropping good sets and being one of the easier ones to get to the end game, it is a very important dungeon for players to really understand and keep an eye on exactly how the loot works. So that's why I'm doing this video. And one important note is I will be talking about Dragon 20 because that is the stage that I farm, and that's the stage that a lot of your endgame players are going to be farming. And if you're not there yet, don't worry. If you keep playing the game actively, if you keep progressing your account, you will definitely get to a point where you're able to do Dragon 20. I have videos on my channel where I use all rare champions and show you types of mechanics that you can use to go ahead and beat the dragon. So I will be going over stage 20, and that is very important to get to because now you no longer get 4-star drops. You only get 5 and 6-star. And let's dive into the spreadsheet and go over exactly how the loot works in this dungeon. So here we go. Let's pull that up and we can start talking about this. Okay, so first things first is I do want to do some graphing and get this to look a little bit more fancy, but didn't want to wait forever to share this data. And also you'll see on the top left the total runs at 325. I want a sample size of at least 1,000 to really feel like these numbers make more sense, and the more the better. Honestly, you probably want 5 or even 10,000 to really feel like the numbers are concrete when you have this many variables. But I can already see some things taking shape that well enough to talk about some different things in terms of how the dungeon works and how you can expect your loot to go when you are farming the dragon. So the first thing to talk about is the set distribution, which you will see down on the bottom left. And there are 9 sets that drop in the dragon's lair. So if all things are equal, if all sets drop with equal distribution, we should see each set at 11.111 repeating percent, because that is 100% divided by 9 sets, and you get the 11.1 repeating. So that seems to be pretty good. We're seeing our percentages between 9 and 13 typically. So my guess is that each set as of right now is weighted pretty equally, because the average is going to be pretty close to that 11.1 repeating. And I actually took about 5 seconds just now and added that. You'll see on the very bottom left next to the 325 for total runs, I went ahead and had it calculate the average of all the percentages, and you can see there is the 11.1 repeating. So I figured why not throw that in there as a visual. So in terms of set distribution, all seems to be coming out to be showing a standard deviation of all the sets dropping equally, which is a good thing. And then if we slide over to the right, you will see 5 and 6-star distribution. Now, this is looking like it's shaping up to be 75% 5-star and 25% 6-star. That's probably the type of numbers they put in there for the loot, is a 75% 5-star and a 25% 6-star. I bet you no matter how many runs you do, those numbers will be pretty close to that. And then if we slide up just a little bit to the rare, epic, and legendary distribution, you'll see 62%, 29%, and 8 or 9% on the legendaries there. Now, this one is going to be, you're going to need a bigger sample size to probably feel super accurate about that one, because legendaries, there's a lot of RNG. That number is probably going to float anywhere between 5 and 10% if I had to guess. So then you'll break down the rares and epics kind of after that. I think I've done, in all the sample sizing I've done in my time playing Raid, that legendary percent number always seems to be at about 7.5%. So I would guess that I got a little bit lucky here, and the legendary would draw closer down a little bit from that 8.6 trending towards a 7.5% if I kept adding onto a sample size, which I plan on doing. I'm going to try to chart this as much as I can. It's a really long process, especially if you see up above, I break it down by weapon, helm, shield, glove, chest, boot, and the distribution of these stars and the rarities. So charting them each individual run, every single thing, and making sure I'm doing it right and keeping it accurate, along with way up top, keeping track of speed boosts, flat chests, and flat gloves. It takes a really long time to chart all this. So the 325 runs took me a long time in terms of charting it individually, but I do want to keep going and get this up over 1,000 so I can get these numbers as concrete as possible and share them with you guys. And then if you go towards kind of the middle of the spreadsheet, you'll see the different items, the weapon, glove, boot, all that type of stuff. Now, I always thought that there was a different distribution. Now, the reason I'm doing this video again, I actually did this exact same type of video about probably 7 or 8 months ago at this point, where I went over the dragon analytics because it's such an important dungeon, like I discussed. And back then I kept track of items on the top versus items on the bottom. So your weapon, helm, and shield versus your glove, chest armor, and boots. And what I found was they weren't a 50-50 split, at least not at first, but then it tended to change a little bit over time. So I wanted to make sure and do this again. And I'm actually a little bit surprised that all of the artifacts seem to be dropping at an equal rate. You can see there that all the percentages are between 16 and 18%. So a pretty well-rounded distribution in terms of each individual artifact. And I'm a little bit shocked because if I put this away, and if I go to my champion index and my items here, I'll show you what I'm talking about. I always seem to have a lot more items that are up on top versus items on the bottom. You can see here my life set. Lots of weapons and shields. Lots of weapons and shields. Weapons, helms, shields. And I'm always lacking the items on the bottom. And so I always thought that the items on the top drop a lot more often than the ones on the bottom. But if I pull this back up, I actually don't think that's the case. I think what's happening is the items up top, it's a lot easier to get them to roll well, so you end up keeping more of them in relation to how many of the items on the bottom that you keep. The gloves, chest, and boots are a lot tougher to get because you have to jump over an extra hurdle. So on your weapon, helm, and shield, you don't have the flat stat hurdle to jump over. They always roll the same stat. The weapons always attack. The weapons always attack. The helm is always HP. The shield is always defense. So you don't have to worry about jumping over that initial hurdle. The items on the bottom, if they roll a flat stat, they're just dead to you. Especially if you're in the end game, they're just a waste to keep. So that's why you always end up with a lesser amount of the items on the bottom despite the items on the top, but they do seem to all drop equally at an equal rate. It's just that the items on the bottom are much tougher to get to roll well because of the flat stats that can occur on them, and you want the percentage stats, which aren't even an option on the items on top. That's why you keep a higher percentage of them. So now if you focus your attention up towards the top middle where it shows speed boots, flat chests, and flat gloves, you will see that 16% of the boots that dropped were speed boots. Now, you do keep boots that aren't speed, but they typically have to be very good. They have to have speed as a substat and like crit rate and HP percent, defense percent. It's very tough to get non-speed boots that you will keep. They typically got to be very, very good. So only about probably 20% of the boots that we find, we can even consider keeping. And even speed boots can be garbage. They can have a bunch of flat stats even if they roll speed. So that's why it's so hard to get boots that you will keep. And then flat chests, you will see almost 60% of the chests I found were a flat stat. Now the reason there's so much more flat chests versus flat gloves is because the chest can roll accuracy and resistance, which is technically a flat stat, and I did include that in there. Now, you can have really good accuracy and resistance chests, especially in the higher tiers of arena, if you can get them to like triple roll speed or something as a substat. But again, the chests and the boots and the gloves have so many hurdles to get over in terms of that main stat to even get to the point where you're looking at the substats to keep them, because we can all relate. You find an item with you find like those gloves that are 6-star and they roll perfect substats, and then they have flat HP as the main stat, so you just have to trash them. And that's why you can see here, 60% of my chests I'm not even really thinking about keeping, and about 40-something% of my gloves I'm not even thinking about keeping. That's why you end up with so much less items on the bottom versus items on the top. There's also a silver farming aspect that I want to go over and touch on. How much silver you can expect to get when you are farming the dragon. If I click on the cell, you'll see up top there, the 34,000, that represents the average artifact silver gain from an artifact that I sell. So I tracked out of these 325 runs, I sold about 290 artifacts to 300, somewhere in there. And I tracked, of those 300 artifacts that I sold out of this 325, what was the average price that it sold for? And it was like 33,987. So I put 34,000. That's the average price that you can expect an artifact that you sell to gain you in terms of silver. And then the 11,250 that you see on the right, that is the guaranteed silver that you get from Dragon 20 itself. You add those two numbers together and you multiply by the total runs that you have done, and you get the silver gain, and that will constantly change and go up as I run the dungeon. So the about the 5,200 energy that I spent netted me almost 15 million silver and probably about 25 items that I kept, with all the distributions that you see there that I have kind of gone over and explained. But I look forward to making this look even more fancy and continuing to track this. Now, why did I do this video again when I did it 7 or 8 months ago? It's good to do this at least once a year, especially in the most important dungeon of the game, to keep an eye on if anything's changing and keep things up to date, keep things fresh, and then just step your game up. Like I track a lot more on this than I did on the last one, so it's a little bit more consistent in terms of what you're able to extrapolate from the data and be able to look how everything kind of shakes out in terms of dragon farming. But yeah, let's put that away, and that's gonna kind of do it for this video. I had a lot of fun charting these dragon runs and going over exactly how everything works. Feel free to let me know down in the comments your experiences in farming the dragon, and if you get different numbers than what I have. And totally admittedly, 325 is not a huge sample size. I'm going to continue to work on this, but it takes a long time as one person sitting here trying to chart these individually, so I didn't want to wait months to get this video out. I'll continue to work on this. I'll keep you guys up to date on the odds of the dragon and if anything's changing, and try to get this as refined as possible so I can get you guys the best data that I can. So yeah, that's going to do it for this video. As always, thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.